Hey there, Maverick. Welcome to episode 6. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dig into the big dreams, bold moves, and the million lessons along the way. This is our check-in, just you and me, crafting and claiming a life that is fully yours. So the last several episodes, I really took you through my story, all the way from being born, literally, to elementary school, to junior high, to high school. And now I want to talk to you a little bit about how I started my first business just 2 weeks out of high school when I got my first tax ID number. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what it took to take that jump, but how it was deeper wired than I even realized. And maybe you can connect some dots in your own life. So I graduated high school after telling my guidance counselor that I was willing to take the risk of working at McDonald's or being a stripper. You'll have to go back to episode 5 to hear that full story. But again, I knew I could do it. I knew I could have my own photography business, and I actually had a pretty brilliant idea. I had the idea that I knew all the juniors, or a lot of the juniors in the grade below me. In our school, I graduated with about 800 students, but all of our classes were very intermixed between all the grades. And I was also in marching band. I played the drums, and so I knew a lot of friends from marching band. And I knew that one thing that all seniors need are senior pictures. I remember having to save and work hard, and the not fun process I had of my senior pictures just about 6 months earlier, and how much money I had to pay this elderly couple who was not hip and cool, and the grunts and groans the photographer made as he tried to bend down to get a low angle or carry a little chair for me. And I just knew I could do it better. And so I created a business plan that I was going to turn around and do senior pictures for all of my friends who were going to be seniors that year. I believe I charged $125 and actually did really, really well. It was so fun also just going around town, going to parks. I knew all the good spots, the spots no one else knew, and I started my business. Well, I know I could have just done it on the side. I wanted to do it right. So I did the research on what it would take to get a tax ID number through the state of Nebraska. I filled out the paperwork as a sole proprietor using my social security number as my business tax ID number, and it was official. I was a real business. And I just remember that feeling of satisfaction of doing it the right way. If I was going to call this my career, I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be legit. And for some reason, having that paper from the Secretary of State solidified that for me. It made me feel like this wasn't a hobby anymore. And that took it to the next level, even just that one piece of paper. I think it's really interesting. One of my favorite books that I always recommend when people are trying to decide if they want to go into business for themselves is called The E-Myth Revisited, like E-MYTH. And in that book, I just feel like the author, Michael Gerber, does a really great job explaining the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. This is a conversation I have quite a bit and have actually gotten a couple of heated conversations over it because I do think that there's a big difference. I think they're both very, very important. I think all roles are important. But I do think that the word entrepreneur, now more than ever, is really being thrown around, that anyone can do it, that it's not necessarily easy, but it's almost in style. And so I always like to go back to what the difference is. I believe, and Michael Gerber, the author of this book, believes that the big difference is an entrepreneur is a visionary. An entrepreneur is someone who's always thinking about the future. They're dreaming up new ideas, they're spotting new opportunities, and they're constantly focused on what could be. So I always think of an entrepreneur as, yes, they love what they're doing, but they actually love the vision and the business and the problem solving more than the actual business that they're in. So for example, I love photography, but I love the visionary, the dreaming, the packages, the target audience, the putting together a marketing plan and the prices. And I love that more. So if someone said you can either choose between being a photographer and doing the same thing forever, the same packages, the same prices, the same studio location, or you can switch careers. Let's say that you're going to own a bakery where you can dream and have vision and do whatever you want. I would learn how to make cupcakes. I'm not a good baker, but to me, I love the business. I love the future. I love the dreaming more than I love the skill or the talent, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, I have skill and talent in that visionary role, but photography was just a vehicle to get me there. Just like owning a bakery would be a vehicle to get you there. Just like owning a power washing company would be a vehicle to get you there. There's lots of vehicles you can take, but the point of being an entrepreneur is that you love the journey even more than you love the vehicle. I hope that makes sense. So in contrast, the way that I view a business owner is that a business owner does have some control over their schedule. They do get to make decisions. They maybe have a couple employees, but a business owner loves the business that they're in more than the vision and the dreaming and what could be. So an example of this could be someone who, let's say, owns a mechanic shop. They're a business owner. Their name's on the sign. They're taking all the risk. Their name's on the invoice, but they are running the day-to-day. They love being a mechanic, and they open at the same time. They close at the same time. They offer the same services. They maybe have the same 1 or 2 employees, and they don't have a vision to grow beyond that. So in some ways, being a business owner, in my idea, is copying and pasting a system that works over and over, maybe for years, maybe for decades, but in some ways you own your job. If you don't show up, odds are no one's getting the work done. If you, heaven forbid, are in the hospital, you break your leg, no one else is carrying that company for you. It's truly this business that you've created, but in some ways, the negative side is that they say that you own a job. That's one way that Michael Gerber describes it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is truly different. I feel like in a different category than being an entrepreneur. So I knew in my heart I was an entrepreneur. And some of the reasons I knew that is because I looked at the world as a world of possibilities. No matter what I was doing, I saw the world through a lens of how can I make things better? How can I do things faster? How can I do things more efficiently? I would remember being at restaurants and I would think of ways that they could do things better, or being on a bus and thinking about how this route could be improved, or how they could market this route to even more people, or how they could expand this bus route into other kinds of services like taxis or bicycle rental. I was always thinking bigger and bigger and bigger. So while yes, I had this great idea to start by taking photos of the high school seniors, I knew that that was a very limited time, and that was okay, because I had the vision that this would kickstart my business. And then after that, I could move on. And I did. I moved on to family portraits. Then for 8 years, I shot weddings. I would stay home with my 4 little babies, and every weekend, about 35 weekends a year, I would take pictures at weddings. Then as my kids got into school, I wanted my weekends back. I transitioned that into corporate photography, where I really worked for companies, for the most part 9 to 5, besides some amazing travel doing incentive trips. But photography was my vehicle, but I loved the journey of what's next, making a company that grew with me, with my lifestyle, with the income I needed to make, with the schedule that I had, and that was what I loved. About 6 years ago, I transitioned that into a branding agency, and making that transition to focus on brands holistically was a pretty easy transition, because it was never about photography. It was about solving the problem that I thought I could do better than anyone else. So if you're on the fence on if you want to start your own business, if you feel like you're entrepreneur minded, I would encourage you to think through that. Think about, how do you think of business? In the book E-Myth Revisited, he also talks about how oftentimes if you just love the craft, the example they actually give in the book is a baker. Someone loved baking. Then they turned it into a business as a business owner, and they actually didn't like it anymore. It became a job. They bought their hobby into a job, and they really lost the magic and that fun. Photography to me lost that a little bit as well, because I started seeing the world through the only time I'd want to take a picture is if it had a purpose or a price tag behind it. So I found that I stopped taking pictures on vacation or just for fun. Now I'm starting to get that back, which I really enjoy. And that was my sign that I was starting to like the vehicle more than I did the journey. So I'd encourage you to think through that a little bit today. If you think that you want to be an entrepreneur, really get a clear look in the mirror and see how you see the world. Is it about what's next, or is it simply about the talent or the skills that you have? As an entrepreneur, the truth is that as your company grows and scales, you probably won't be doing that talent anymore. To grow and scale, at some point you'll be hiring that out. It wasn't too long into my branding agency, my first hire was a photographer. So I hired my talent out because that's what I needed to do to sit into that visionary seat and to scale my business. Again, if you love baking and you open a bakery, if you're the business owner, you're probably going to be the one baking every single batch of cupcakes. But if you're truly an entrepreneur, you're going to see the bigger vision, and you'll probably hire a team of bakers for your first location. But as soon as that first location is rocking and rolling, you're already going to be thinking of your second and your third. In your e-commerce platform, you're also going to be thinking about the accessories you can sell, because that's how an entrepreneur brain thinks. It's very fun. It's also very exhausting, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's how I got started in my entrepreneur journey. And this is truly just the beginning. Right now, I'm a parallel entrepreneur with 4 different companies running at the same time. And every day I wake up with ideas to expand and grow the companies I have, ideas for brand new ventures, ideas for industries I know nothing about. Because again, it's not about the vehicle. It's not about the industry. It's not about the talent. I know that that's something that can always be hired out. It's about solving this problem better than I think anyone else can do. So I hope that helps bring some clarity to that. And I have now been working for myself since 2003. So for 21 years. I've never had a real job, I say, even though I work a little bit 7 days a week, but I love the freedom that it brings. And that's what I want to talk about in the next episode. So I hope to see you then, and know that we can always continue this conversation. You can always find me on Instagram. My handle is the Juliet Wright. Make sure to go out there and create, claim, and conquer the life you're here to live. And always remember, I have your back.